Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher, and today we're talking about how to run epic D&D wilderness survival and exploration games where the emphasis is on survival, surviving in the wilderness, exploring, etc. How do you run these types of games and make them fun and not make them annoying and tedious? Now I've got to give a shout out to Mikkel6938. Mikkel was the one who requested this. Mikkel has requested many awesome videos in the past, and so thank you so much, Mikkel, for requesting this. Basically, Mikkel said, I'd love some tips on how to run wilderness survival and exploration in general. And so this was a fantastic question. I have run some of these in the past. I can tell you exactly how I would run this, and I have 4 tips. You're going to want to stick around for all 4 because these 4 basically schools of thought, these 4 thought processes will help to guide you from going from mediocre wilderness survival exploration to awesome, the type of game where people are just like really penny pinching over every resource and trying to figure out how to survive and make it work. It's going to be so much fun, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I would build this. If you have a request for me that you would like me to make a video about, drop it in the comments. I collect them and I make videos about the requests I get as often as I can. I may not always get time to respond to every single comment, but I promise you I read every single comment and I appreciate it so much. With that being said, if you'd give me a thumbs up and a subscribe, I would also really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm here almost every day creating content about the best game in the world, D&D, trying to provide a little bit of inspiration for you awesome D&D people. And so if you give me a thumbs up and a comment, and a subscribe, this really helps me to grow my channel and it shows my videos to more people, and then I get more views and more subs and my channel does grow, and it is awesome. And I just want to thank you so much for doing that in advance. If you just give me that thumbs up and that subscribe, it helps me out so much. And with that being said, I would love to hear your feedback on this. Do you have any tips for how you would run an epic D&D wilderness survival exploration game? Have you done this in the past? Drop those comments for Mikkel. Add as much value as possible. We are all learning from each other here, and I love it. All right, with that being said, let's dive into this. I've got 4 things to go over here, and I just want to clarify these 4 elements because I think that they're going to work to make your wilderness survival and exploration game the very best it can be. And that starts with tip number 1. To me, the more in-depth you want to get with survival and exploration, the more serious you need to get about a few things. First of all, you got to get real serious about survival checks and nature checks. Now, this might seem obvious at first, but it's really important to keep in mind that in every D&D game, you can only pay attention and track so many different things. You can only take so many things so seriously. And really, what the focus ends up on usually is the choice of the GM. The GM kind of chooses what they really want to hone in on. And when you're talking about wilderness survival and exploration, you're going to want to really hone in on those survival and nature checks. Those are going to be a big deal. And I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, but let's move on here. Some other things you really want to take seriously: resource scarcity, terrain, weather, how encounters drain crucial resources from the party. For example, exhaustion, healing supplies, clothing, weapons, and armor that's been damaged from combat, etc. So the thing about survival and exploration that makes it fun is like the thrill of discovery versus the danger of scarcity and depleting resources, okay? And this can come in a number of ways: food, healing, tools, shelter, warmth, fresh water, right? Clean, drinkable water. So these are all things, these are resources that can and will run scarce in a survival context. And so you want to set up your campaign from the very beginning with scarcity in mind, and you want to set it up for creating that possibility. The truth of the matter is that in real life survival and exploration experiences, those who are going on the expedition can only carry so much. They can only do so much to try to stave off disaster. Because the truth is, these characters are going to be launching out on their voyage or their mission or their expedition. They can only carry so much. They are only going to have so much money with which to set up the exploration. They're going to have to make some crucial choices. Are they going to carry more food? Are they going to carry more weapons? Are they going to choose to carry extra arrows? Or are they going to choose to carry another couple days of rations? Are they going to use their money to buy a tent? Or are they going to use that money to buy something like cord that they can use to set traps with? Or are they going to invest in a lantern? Or are they going to try to make fire with torches in the wilderness? Like, there are so many different variables that come in here. How much rope are they bringing, right? What kind of clothes? Are they dressing for warm weather, cold weather? Are they including anything in their inventory for shelter? Are they including enough food that they're going to be able to sustain themselves, or are they going to have to hunt or trap out in the wilderness to survive? These are all crucial questions. And when you set it up, you want to set it up with scarcity in mind. And this has to come in at the very beginning, because you don't want to just like give them an easy road. You want to give them sort of a common sense starting point that will cause them to have to pinch pennies and choose carefully what they're going to take, what they're not going to take. This sets it up to be so much fun and awesome. And that's kind of key to a survival exploration sort of setting. Another thing that really goes in line with this is everything has an expiration date. Okay. So in D&D, a lot of times wear and tear isn't really given much attention because there just isn't time to do it. But in a survival type setting, you want to pay attention to wear and tear. So for example, maybe every sword, every knife, every bow has 100 hit points. And every time there's an encounter or situation where they use it, they roll a d4, that many hit points are taken away, right? How good is this tool? How well did the craftsman craft it? Well, these d4s are going to tell you. You might get 100 uses out of it, or you might get 25, or somewhere in between, right? Now, you don't have to roll for every single little mundane thing. You might just say, every time there's a notable use of the tool or weapon, they roll on it, then, takes it away. Armor and clothing is another thing. How many days can you wear the same explorer's or adventurer's clothing before it starts to get tattered up, before it's starting to fall apart, before it's getting grimy, before there are bugs hatching in it, right? How many times can your breastplate get hit by enemy clubs before the leather starts to give out, before the rivets start to pull out, right? Before the buckle breaks. And once the buckle breaks, what are you going to do? You're just going to tie it together. You're going to sew it up. It's never going to be the same again, right? So making sure that you take scarcity seriously, and then also making sure that everything is given an expiration date and a way to track it. These are very important. And what I would do is I would say every single perishable item in your inventory, and when I say perishable, I mean anything that's not literally a magic item, because magic items are they're really durable because they're magically infused. But if it's not magic, guess what? It has HP. And guess what? That HP can get used up. A tent, every night you sleep in it, maybe it takes 1 HP. Bad weather, roll a d4, right? So you want to use common sense with it, but it's really important for the group to understand that when they go out into the wilderness, their stuff is going to suffer some wear and tear. And this feeds into that scarcity. This feeds into that need to really manage their resources. And that's part of where I think really good survival and exploration comes into. Now, let's go to basically my point number 2. If you truly want to run an epic wilderness survival and exploration game, then you need to make scarcity and the forces of nature themselves really the key bad guy forces that face the party. And the more in-depth you get at treating these things with paramount attention to detail, the more gritty and realistic the survival and wilderness aspects of this will become. So for example, I would be rolling twice a day for weather patterns if I'm running this game, right? During the rain, what's going on? Are they seeking shelter, or are they just walking around in it? Well, guess what? Their clothes out in that rain like that, they're going to take extra wear and tear. They're going to be more exhausted if it's a cold, rainy weather and they don't seek shelter. If they're out in the snow, the extreme cold is going to force more fatigue on them. I'm really going to pay attention to exhaustion and fatigue. And in fact, what I might do is I might say shelter versus non-sheltered. If they don't take shelter in particularly extreme types of weather, then it counts up to fatigue, and then they might end up fatigued, etc. Right? So fatigue could very easily set in even in one day if they don't take shelter from inclement weather very seriously, right? Another thing is, are you walking around in the pouring rain in the hot, humid day with your full plate armor on? Oh my God, you're going to be so exhausted, right? So it's like these little things like this. How much weight are you carrying is another thing that fits into this. But the point of this is that the forces of nature and the scarcity that they impose upon you are really the key antagonists of the story. They might have big bad guys. There might be an evil druid out there who's hunting them. There might be a dire bear or a pack of dire wolves who have chosen to stalk this group. But those are only elements of the true danger, the true bad guy, which is nature and the danger and just the bald-faced brutality of the elements that it wields, right? And you either sink or you swim out there. So that's really important also. And this leads me to my third point on this. Wilderness is itself a formidable and unpredictable force. And something as simple as a crude shelter, which takes time and resources and skill to create, could mean a lot of the difference between, for example, snake bites in the middle of the night, getting chewed up by bugs, etc. It could also make a difference in how players manage or store their food, and the way that they manage and store their food could mean the difference between whether a bear comes along to eat them at night or not, right? And whether or not they have clothing that matches the weather could be the simple foundational principle that governs whether or not they're constantly fatigued, either from the cold, hot, or humidity. In other words, the wilderness itself and the things that live in it are ever-present forces. Like I said, there are snakes, there are vermin, there are bugs. There's going to be shelter. Okay, did they bring a tent? Awesome. Tent is relatively easy to set up. What happens when the tent fails? Now they're going to have to find a different way to make shelter. It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to chop down logs? Okay, that's going to take time. It's going to take food calories. You're going to put wear and tear on your axe. You're going to put wear and tear on the rope that you're using, right? So all of these things come into account. Finding a cave is way easier. Maybe they find a cave. Okay, but are they going to stay here and live here, or are they going to continue the expedition? And if so, are they going to choose to go up the upland into the mountains, or are they going to go down into the marsh? The marsh has big snakes. The mountains have snow and razor sharp glaciers. Which way are they going to go? There's snow. Do they have snowshoes? If not, the difficult terrain makes it even more difficult. In the marsh, it's difficult. You could get bitten by piranha, right? So it's really important to think of nature and the forces within it as an ever-present danger that is always encroaching. There's never a break. There is never a break. It's not like, oh, you get in your tent, you sleep, and finally everything's fine. No, not everything's fine. There's going to be random roles for wilderness encounters with animals who might be stalking them in the night. And in D&D, as we all know, there are big animals. There are scary animals out there. So this all, and another thing is, if you roll a random encounter and during the night they hear growling and stuff, are they going to be able to sleep? Roll on your constitution to see if you can even fall asleep, or it might be a will save. I would probably call it actually a will save to be able to summon the mental fortitude to be able to sleep in the face of all that. But someone, if they don't fall asleep, they're going to end up fatigued, right? If you have an elf, thankfully, they don't have to sleep all night, so they could do their meditation. They can kind of get around that, but they can't get around getting fatigued by trudging through the snow and this and that. So there's a lot there to think about. Okay. And this kind of brings me to my fourth part, which is survival checks and nature checks. Okay. Now here's the way I'm going to run this. Whenever the group is together and they're facing sort of collective survival or nature decisions, and it's going to call for a survival check or a nature check, this is what I'm going to kind of say to them. I'm going to say, okay, look, here's how you can do this. You can do this in one of two ways. I can make secret checks for all of you on survival and nature, and then tell each of you what you think. Or you can choose the person with the highest survival or nature score to make your decisions, and then all of you working with them, that will give them advantage, and then I'll give them an answer. Which way do you want to do it? Do you all want to roll, or do you want to give one person charge, let them roll with advantage, and then see what the answer is? Okay. So I want to keep it like this because here's the thing. I want those survival checks and those nature checks to matter so much. And I want the group to really think about what their best odds are for succeeding when they're kind of deliberating on, well, should we follow the river? What does the map say? Are we reading the map correctly? Are those tracks from a bear or a panther? How likely is it we're going to run into natives out here? How likely is it that there are wild roving bands of goblins or something like that out here, right? So I'm going to want to really force players to take those survival and nature checks very seriously. And this is true also of as simple as building a shelter. Okay, you're going to build a shelter. It's going to take you a couple hours to do this. Okay, we have your plan. Let me ask you a question. Do you all want to roll survival independently and then see how quick you get that shelter built together? Or do you want to elect one of you to lead the process and to give orders, and then all of you working together can give that person advantage because you need this level of check to be successful? How do you want to approach this? Right? So I'm going to ask the party what they want to do, because that's the difference between kind of like having a leader organizing versus having everyone kind of just doing their own thing. And hopefully there's enough productivity that it'll get done, but you need the check to pass. So there you go. Those are my tips and kind of what I would do to run an epic D&D wilderness survival exploration game, right? One other thing that just comes to mind is things like wounds also are important to track. Like if someone gets a wound, it's going to take time to heal, but there are going to be checks to see how well it's healing. Is there going to be infection? Are there going to get bugs? Is it going to get bugs in it? Like, these things are really important. These things are very important to track. So I might even give each wound an HP level, and it heals so much every day. Maybe I'm going to make some rolls, see how the environment is affecting it. If that person was working hard and in the swamp, maybe that wound suffered setback. It didn't heal as good. Now the person's fatigued. Maybe they can't use their arm, etc. Right? So there's a lot of things to think about in this. And that scarcity element is part of what makes it awesome and makes it fun. All right. That's all I've got for this one. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. And hey, I will see all of you awesome people on the next one.